Chapter 599. It's no wonder that Blackbeard is so excited. He found an ability more powerful than dark fruit and tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. Of course, his heart is no different from being injected with chicken blood. The reason why he couldn't wait to get the dark fruit was because of his special body structure. Furthermore, the dark fruit's ability was strange and evil. It was tailor-made for him. When combined, it would produce an incredible effect. Blackbeard and dark fruit fuse together and have the power to turn something rotten into something magical. At that time, everything impossible will become possible. When I get dark fruit, I will occupy all of you and seize your power for my own use. Arrogant and ambitious laughter resounded through the dark night sky. Blackbeard rowed the boat harder. He can't do it, but it is possible with the power of the Whitebeard pirates. The next morning, the wind was gentle and the sun was bright and cloudless. Dustless and Garp's battleship moved slowly. Their destination is Marine headquarters. Although the way of transmitting news in this world is as slow as a turtle, the transmission of some important information is unimaginably fast, even faster than the three-dimensional world where Dustless lived before. Good things don't come true, bad things come true. Those guys. On the deck, bathing in the warm sunlight, Dustless looked at the newspaper in his hand with interest. The color pictures of him crushing the pirates almost occupied the entire newspaper picture. The words Marine Honorary Admiral were marked on it. This is not bad news, you are already famous. Garp came over and ate the shellfish as usual. He also shouted about breaking the record. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This old guy always appears in such a funny way. Winking at Wuxia, Garp smiled boldly. The forced smile on his old face looked particularly strange and full of other meanings. No matter what, Wuxia could no longer hide behind the scenes like in the past. He could no longer be completely exposed under the sunlight and have nowhere to hide. Shrugging, Dustless smiled and no longer entangled. This kind of blessing and misfortune are interdependent. Even if his identity is exposed, it will be much easier to do things in the future and he will not encounter many inconvenient obstacles. You are the only admiral in the Navy at present. Garp's tone was full of envy and jealousy as he tasted the scallop in his hand. Dustless had risen to the heavens in a single step and been conferred the title of Great General. Even if it was just an honorary Great General without the slightest authority, this was still unprecedented. In the Marine, many people who have worked for 40 or 50 years are only at the rank of Vice Admiral. There are only a few admiral positions and they have long been divided. Dustless changed the history of the Marine. Of course, it can also be understood as the special treatment of the celestial dragons and his bottomless strength to be able to hold this position. Who told you to refuse the promotion? Otherwise, about 10 years ago you should have been an admiral, the same period as Sengoku and Z. Dustless looked at Garp with deep meaning and said with admiration. Being an official from 1,000 miles away was only a name. A person like Garp who was willing to abandon a general was worthy of the 4 words lofty and lofty. After sitting on the admiral, can I still eat scallops like this? Garp happily ate the scallop and didn't take it seriously. Fame and fortune were nothing but fleeting clouds to him. They were dispensable. By the way, your Marine headquarters will soon promote the 3 of them to admiral. The thread of conversation suddenly turned and Wuxia asked quietly. The 3 people in his mouth are naturally Kuzanji, Sakazuki, and Borsellino, the 3 future admirals. Hearing this, Garp suddenly stopped eating and then nodded seriously. He didn't hide it and said bluntly, this is the meaning of Sengoku and those 5. You can be promoted to admiral, the 3 of them are also decades old, why can't they? Garp stared at Dustless and smiled. Dustless's qualifications can be ignored, but he still ascended to the position of admiral. Kazan and the other 2 are also veterans of the Marine, and they have been in the position of vice admiral for many years. Their qualifications are far above Dustless, and their strength is comparable to an admiral, so they can indeed go further. This is also true. Dustless nodded slightly. Although these words are unpleasant to hear, it is true. The identity of an honorary admiral of the Marine was suddenly exposed. For the whole world, it was like a rock falling into the sea, splashing huge ripples. Some people who didn't know the truth even laughed and ridiculed that the Marine used this to keep up appearances. Dustless's skin was white like jade, his facial features were exquisite, and there was an indescribable noble aura between his eyebrows. At first glance he looked like a noble son of a wealthy family. Only some big pirates who knew the truth behind the scenes were worried about the future. I said that the back of the honorary admiral was familiar, but I didn't expect it to be him. On an island in the east, blue red-hair Shanks, who was driven out of the new world by Dustless, whispered to himself, his face full of caution. Before, Dustless was just hiding behind the scenes, but now he suddenly jumped to the front, which means that there will be more head-on confrontations in the future. Shanks felt stifled in his heart as he recalled Dustless's earth-shattering strength. His originally optimistic state of mind suddenly became dispirited and dispirited. His face was as pale as paper. To him, Dustless was an unforgettable shadow. They were sent by God to fight to the death with the pirates. New World, an island once occupied by Bigu's mom. The sky was cloudless and the sun was infinite, nourishing the devastated earth, and everything was full of vitality. Only the Whitebeard pirates were a different scene. It's that damn kid again. On the sea, looking from a distance, the whole battleship was trembling slightly, the sky was gloomy, and the oppressive atmosphere of Whitebeard was changing the natural environment. Blackbeard has reported all the situation to him, and all the dirty water has been poured on Dustless, the honorary admiral of the marine. Chapter 600. Whitebeard's powerful hands grabbed the newspaper, and his beard was raised in a straight line. His whole body was covered with some kind of mysterious power, and there was a clearly visible blood net in his eyes. Buzz. After a while, there was a violent restlessness in the air, shrinking at an incredible speed, forming a circular air cover converging between Whitebeard's hands. You can hear the miserable sadness in the void, full of begging for mercy. Dad, this is the Moby Dick. If you hit it, it'll be finished. Marco the immortal bird hurriedly advised. Whitebeard is such a person. He never hides and suppresses his emotions. He hates conspiracies and tricks. He likes to be straightforward, and his temper is the same. The corner of Marco's eyes revolved around Blackbeard. Although Blackbeard's explanation is reasonable, the doubts in Marco's heart are difficult to erase. Even though Blackbeard gave people the impression that he was a simple and honest person, very sunny and helpful, he gave people the feeling that he was a vicious viper lurking behind the scenes. When he opens his fangs and reveals his crimson tongue, the prey he aims at is already in the bag. At that time, it means that everything is already too late. All in all, even if the explanation is reasonable, it can't dispel the doubts in Marco's heart. Marco can only say that it's intuition why he doubts Blackbeard so much. At some point, Blackbeard is more like the natural enemy of the Whitebeard pirates. His sharp claws are all restrained by him, exposing only a harmless appearance. Oyaji, I suggest that we immediately chase down the Bigumam pirates, grab the dark fruit, and avenge the dead Thatch. Thatch's death cast a dark cloud over the entire Whitebeard pirates. Blackbeard's face was full of tears, and the corners of his eyes were wet with crystal tears. His miserable and painful expression was more sad than the death of his parents. Yes, damn Bigumam, let's fight them to the end. Avenge Thatch. Let them know the consequences of offending the Whitebeard pirates and become the first Yonko for emperors to be removed. Kill them all. Blackbeard's rapid speech was recognized by all the members of the Whitebeard pirates. All of them immediately became united against a common enemy and shouted to join forces to kill the Bigumam pirates. Seeing this scene, Marco frowned. It was a good thing that the entire Whitebeard pirates were united, but the wind seemed to be blowing in the wrong direction. Even if you want to take revenge, you have to find the honorary admiral. He is the enemy of the same family. Surd's death has nothing to do with Bigu's mom. Marco stared at Blackbeard in confusion and asked. The understatement suddenly extinguished the enthusiasm of the Whitebeard pirates, and everyone's indignant expressions were all solidified and they became sluggish again. All the crew members looked at Blackbeard, waiting for his explanation and reasoning. Seeing this, Blackbeard's old face suddenly twitched. His expression was particularly gloomy and frightening. After being asked by Marco, he was really speechless. His ugly expression was the same as if he had eaten 10 pounds of flies. As for the reason, *T reason. This was originally the reason why he used the power of the Whitebeard pirates to rob the dark fruit, but he made it up on the spur of the moment. Damn Marco, when I get the opportunity, I will kill you like I killed Surd and let you understand the consequences of going against me. Blackbeard swore in his heart. Every time he was complacent, there were always two annoying flies jumping out to hit his face, and he was unable to refute. Only after getting the dark fruit can we increase our battle power and find that man for revenge and have more confidence. His eyes lit up. Blackbeard, who had been wandering the sea for half his life, was not a mortal. He hesitated for a few seconds and said indignantly to Marco. Even though it was just a made-up reason, it left Marco speechless. As Blackbeard said, only by injecting fresh blood into the Whitebeard pirates can this almost decaying battleship rebloom with vitality and sail tenaciously. This guy. Marco's face changed slightly. Even if he didn't like Blackbeard, he had to admit that he was indeed a wise man. It's a pity that his real heart belongs to the Whitebeard pirates, or is it a temporary lurk that is worth exploring? Opening his mouth, Marco was about to open his mouth to explain when Whitebeard's powerful shout resounded through the entire pirate group, shaking all the members such as Blackbeard and Marco for a while. The sharp sword in his hand pointed to the sea in front of him, and the sea covered by the sword was faintly in a state of collapse. Everyone, the almost blood-red pupils stared at the distant sea, and he seemed to see Bigu's mom drinking tea. The cold killing intent filled the entire sea, causing the sea to freeze exaggeratedly. Seeing this scene, Blackbeard's breathing became heavy, and his expression was full of morbid excitement. Just when he thought that Whitebeard was going to fight to the death with Bigu's mom, the next sentence directly sent him from the clouds to hell. Retreat. The roar of resentment and unwillingness resounded through the endless sky, and the lazy clouds in the sky were erased by Whitebeard's sorrowful cry. The sword in his hand slammed on the deck, and the Moby Dick trembled fiercely, and a wave swept up on the surface of the water and slapped towards the surrounding islands. All the members of the Whitebeard pirates were stunned, including Marco and Blackbeard. Sorry Thatch, I can't take the entire Whitebeard pirates into the net. That guy may have personally weaved a big net for the Whitebeard pirates. People should have self-knowledge. Whitebeard was not an idiot. He knew what would happen if he rashly attacked Mariehua where Dustless was. If the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars join forces, I'm afraid that he will be killed in 100 moves or so. At that time the Whitebeard pirates will also be able to catch a turtle in a jar, and this is still the case where Dustless doesn't do anything. Attacking Mariehua, this is a bloody and cruel war. No, this is not a war. The definition of a war is a war between the two sides. Attacking Mariehua is just an unequal massacre. It's just a unilateral annihilation. Chapter 601. The unilateral trampling and annihilation of the Whitebeard pirates may sound alarmist and appalling, but it is an undeniable fact. The world government is not as bad as imagined, and the Whitebeard pirates are not as powerful as imagined. So far the only one who can fight in the Whitebeard pirates is the old Whitebeard. Everyone else is a rising star in the future, but they are still young and there is no one who can deal with the Marine Admiral level. On the other hand, the other pirates, Bigumam 100 Beast Kaido and Red Hair Shanks, although these people are not as good as Whitebeard, they are younger, especially Red Hair who is only in his 30s, and there is still the possibility of infinite progress in the future. 100 Beast Kaido and Bigumam are also younger than Whitebeard by 10 or even 20 years. Now Whitebeard's body is also going downhill and it is getting worse day by day. Looking at it, there is almost no one who can support the Whitebeard pirates in the future. Thinking of this, Whitebeard felt sad and lonely. Even if Old Tiger's power is still there, one day his feet will step on the ground and his deterrence will disappear. At that time the Whitebeard pirates will become food in the hands of countless jackals and wolves. Father, aren't you a bit alarmist? Marco whispered as he carefully approached Whitebeard. At the same time he handed a large jar of white wine to Whitebeard. Hearing this, Whitebeard just glanced at Marco and didn't speak. He took the wine handed to him and poured it into his mouth. It seemed that this was the only way to relieve the depression in his heart. His beloved son had been killed, but he could only watch helplessly. It was easy to imagine how he felt. It's not that Whitebeard is afraid of death, but as a captain he can't lead the entire pirate regiment into the tiger's den. Compared with the world government's headquarters like Mariehua, the marine headquarters is like a good wolf's den. And Mariehua hides all kinds of prehistoric beasts, enough to easily tear apart a hungry wolf. Alarmist? I also hope that I am sentimental. With a sigh, Whitebeard said hopefully. If time can go back, he will not listen to Roger's inside story. In fact, sometimes ignorance is also a kind of happiness. If he could, how he wished that he did not know some truths and was still the old Whitebeard. It was all that damn Roger's fault for telling him the truth. This caused him to become hesitant in everything he did. He had to consider the consequences of everything he did. Especially when this was only the strength of the world government. Behind the scenes, the celestial dragons who control the world are low-key lurking in the dark, invisible big hands covering the world. Even the highest power in the world is just their lackey. Of course, these dogs were occasionally disobedient, and sometimes they would do things against the will of the celestial dragons. In fact, this was human nature. Once their wings had hardened, no one was willing to continue doing things without saying anything. The 5 honored stars were also ambitious people. It was obviously impossible for them to be silent lackeys for the rest of their lives. Are you referring to celestial dragons? With a flash of understanding in his eyes, Marco asked absurdly. It is well known that the celestial dragons are a group of idiots, and they are not even as good as normal human beings. Whitebeard didn't want to say more. These people are still too young and immature. Knowing some secrets will only make them feel desperate and lose their ambition. The celestial dragons are all idiots. What means did they use to unify the world 800 years ago? In today's world, what means did they use to make the 5 honored stars willing to crawl? Whitebeard is too lazy to explain these unknown secrets. If they know more, they may lose their motivation. In that case, the gains are not worth the losses. Throughout the New World as well as throughout the 4 seas, people are talking about the new Marine Admiral. His reputation is also very different. Some people think that he is worthy of the name. After all, there are pictures in the newspaper of Dustless defeating the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates with overwhelming strength. Similarly, some people think that this is Marine's face. The reason is that Dustless is too young. He is only in his early 20s, but he became an admiral of the Marine. Although he is an honorary admiral, it is difficult to accept that he has no power. After a few days of bumpy sailing, Dustless and Garp finally arrived at their destination, the Marine headquarters, Marlin. The only thing that disappointed Dustless was that the old guy Whitebeard understood the meaning of watching the fire on the other side of the river. He led the entire Whitebeard pirates back to the island where they were originally stationed, and the hatred of Surd's fall was left behind. There is still a long time in the future, and Whitebeard also knows the simple truth that it is not too late for revenge. In the office that belongs to the Admiral, Dustless stood in front of the window, overlooking the Marlin surrounded by battleships. Below there are countless Marines training, carrying out the necessary daily training. The one who trained the new recruits was the retired General Z. What is the movement of the dark fruit? Dustless whispered in the empty room. A dark shadow stepped out of the darkness. It was White Zetsu, who was all white. He reported truthfully, "It is still in the hands of Bigumam, but I am afraid it will not be long before it will be eaten by the subordinates." White Zetsu's face was very ugly. This is the strongest fruit he has tried his best to find. Now that it has fallen into the hands of Bigumam, this is a disguised enemy. That's for the best. Go and tell Hawkeye to try his best to retrieve the dark fruit. Otherwise, find a suitable opportunity to secretly kill the person who ate the dark fruit. A cold light flashed in his eyes as Dustless ordered expressionlessly. No matter who it is, he can't let Bigumam and Whitebeard benefit. Dustless's carefully planned trap will be in vain and become meaningless. White Zetsu nodded and then found the dark corner again and disappeared into the depths of the ground like a ghost. Chapter 602. It's too late to weaken the Whitebeard pirates and the Bigumam pirates. Dustless won't improve their overall strength in a disguised way. This is tantamount to digging his own grave. The whole world is so big. The second half of the New World is almost in the shadow of the Yonko 4 emperors. If he wants to establish a foothold in the New World, the first thing to bear the brunt of is the pressure from the Yonko 4 emperors. Only by dealing with them can he be at ease to dominate the world. Knock knock knock. While pondering, there was a sudden knock on the door and Dustless's thoughts were pulled back. Come in. Creak. The door was gently pushed open and a tall, strong man with a white face and a handsome appearance appeared in front of him. He gave people the feeling of sunshine, confident and gentle. But what makes Dustless most concerned is that he actually knows this person. Your name is Smoker? Glancing at him, Dustless asked calmly. Smoker was stunned when he heard the words and his face showed a surprised expression. He was flattered. He didn't expect Dustless to know him. Now he is just a basic soldier. He has no rights. He is just a cannon fodder in the war. Dustless, on the other hand, was a serious general. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Recognizing him at a glance, Smoker's feelings were abnormally strange. Exactly. He raised his chest and saluted. His tone was neither servile nor overbearing. It was vigorous and loud. His figure was tall and straight like a javelin. His heroic spirit flourished and he had an imposing appearance. This guy is a talent. It is not impossible for him to become an admiral in the future. Seeing this, Dustless gave him an appreciative look. People can't be arrogant but they can be proud. Smoker is young but he can do this very well. Take it. Throwing the devil fruit with strange lines to Smoker, Dustless explained, "This is Logia's smoke fruit. After eating it the host can turn into smoke. You're lucky. This is what Garp and I encountered a pirate group on the way back." Smoker's eyes widened. He didn't expect to meet Dustless for the first time and give him such a valuable gift. The Logia devil fruit was priceless. It was priceless. You might not even be able to buy it with money. There's no need to thank me. This devil fruit is just a burden in my hands. It can't be used. Besides, it was Vice Admiral Garp who robbed it. It should belong to the Marines. Dustless said indifferently. The ability of the smoke fruit is good, but Dustless has no use for it, not to mention that this is only temporarily given to him by Garp. Now that he has given it to the Marine, it can be considered as returning it to its rightful owner. What did you call me here for? Dustless asked as his gaze fell on Smoker's face. His sluggish eyes quickly converged and Smoker sorted out his thoughts. Sengoku wants to see you. As for the reason, speaking of this, Smoker's tone stopped. Now he is just a small soldier and he is still too far away from spying on the confidential identity of the Marines' high-level officials. The weasel paying a New Year's greeting to the chicken is not good. I guess it's about Doflamingo. After thinking for a few seconds, Dustless secretly guessed and faintly understood the intentions of Sengoku. Among his forces only Doflamingo, a mad dog, is stirring up trouble everywhere. There is no wall in the world that doesn't leak and the chance of deceiving the world without anyone knowing is zero. In particular, Doflamingo used the bird cage on the entire Dressrosa, but even so Sengoku is not qualified to interrupt. Shichibukai can plunder the world and not be wanted by the Marine, which is guaranteed by the 5 Mariehua. Suddenly finding Dustless, it is estimated that he wants to stop Doflamingo's actions from him. Knock knock knock. A dull knock on the door sounded. Sengoku raised his eyebrows slightly and immediately said, "The door is not locked, come in." Raising his eyes he saw Dustless. Sengoku's old face suddenly flashed with surprise. He didn't expect Dustless to be so rule-abiding. At first he thought that Dustless would break the door like Garp. After all, Dustless's strength is not lower than his and his status is not lower than his. Overall, his data completely beats Sengoku and he can be so rule-abiding is completely giving him face. Dustless's next sentence suddenly made Sengoku's slightly smiling old face collapse. His face was full of bitterness and wonder, and his heart was replaced by a haze. After you became the fleet admiral, the 4 seas were calm and the New World's imposing pirates made peace. The recent Yonko 4 emperors also quietly retired. The name of Fleet Admiral Sengoku has spread to all corners of the world and the world is talking about it. Dustless's compliment did not make Sengoku happy, but his face was gloomy. During his promotion to the Fleet Admiral, Impel Down was exploited one after another, and the same was true for the Marine headquarters. The most fatal was the recent emergence of the deformed organization, Shichibukai. All of this has brought his reputation as a fleet admiral to the peak. Of course it's not a song but a curse. Every day the citizens who have been tortured by the war of pirates scolded him, and some even directly raised several grades in succession. Sengoku was too lazy to scold him, and he gloriously expressed his condolences to his family. Sengoku also pinched his nose and recognized all this. He had to admit that this era is definitely the most chaotic era in history. Everywhere in the 4 seas the Yonko 4 emperors are rampant, and the admirals of the Marine headquarters are in a state of fault. As a last resort, The evil organization Shichibukai was established to suppress pirates with evil. In addition, and in front of him the celestial dragons who are currently extremely powerful and eat both black and white, Roy South. His head hurts, his chest hurts and his whole body hurts. When he thought of it, Sengoku was speechless for a while and his heart was full of resentment. It was obvious that the enemy was in front of him, but he could only endure it. Not only that, but he also had to squeeze out a smile to accompany him. He could only eat losses. He was often slapped in the face by the man in front of him. The depression in his heart can be imagined. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, often called and scolded him, which made Sengoku's spirit collapse, but he could only suffer in silence. Chapter 603. It's no wonder that Sengoku is so gloomy. The enemy is close at hand but he is helpless. Instead he is full of smiles for fear of angering the celestial dragon in front of him and releasing the mad dog Doflamingo to harm the world. Not to mention the powerful aura of the celestial dragon. Now there is the identity of 7 warlords of the sea, and his master Dustless secretly protects him. There is really no one who dares to trouble Doflamingo. This kid is now free and unfettered. The only one who can restrain him is Dustless. Of course, after Doflamingo committed crimes, in the end, the black pot always needs to be carried by someone else. The bitter candidate is only Sengoku. It's no wonder that the marshal can't lift his head in front of Dustless. Doflamingo the mad dog is a big guillotine. If you have something to say, just say it. Dustless's words made Sengoku see hope and his face was full of joy. But before Sengoku could be happy, Dustless's sudden words once again put him in the 18th layer of hell. Listen or not, it depends on my mood. Dustless shrugged and smiled casually. Sengoku's face turned red when he heard this and his lips trembled with anger. Dustless's playful eyes made him twitch all over, and his forehead was full of black lines. It's really uncomfortable to be hit head-on like this, but he can only endure it. For a while he even wondered whether he should talk to Dustless. This is no different from asking for humiliation. After taking a few deep breaths, Sengoku calmed down. Doflamingo has blocked Dressrosa. His ability is quite strange. Den Mushi can't communicate with the outside world. It is no different from the closed Dead Island. It has become an independent world. Sengoku said worriedly. Since knowing the identity of Doflamingo's Tenryubito, Sengoku knew what his intentions were. Taking advantage of the situation to take back the throne that was given hundreds of years ago. The marshal means? Dustless asked calmly as he sat on the sofa. The cells in his mind accelerated, and in just a few seconds he guessed Sengoku's intention. At the moment he just shook his head disapprovingly. If he wants Doflamingo to give up his dream, it's better to cut him with a knife. This was unrealistic and unscientific. If I'm not wrong, his goal should be Dressrosa's throne. I hope you can stop him. His awe-inspiring eyes fell on Dustless and Sengoku said in a deep voice. He is now one of the 7 warlords of the sea and King Dressrosa is useless to him. He is an evil pirate and I am a righteous marine. How can I stop this? I'm not familiar with him and we're sworn enemies. Dustless chose to be perfunctory and play dumb. Dustless was the mastermind behind the scenes who encouraged Doflamingo to seize Dressrosa. Now it was impossible for him to ask Doflamingo to give up the cooked duck. It would be a pity to let it fly in vain. As for the royal family of Rico, go play with the mud where it's cool. You? Sengoku's pupils widened when he heard this and he looked at Dustless incredulously. He didn't expect Dustless to be so shameless. Doflamingo was not known to everyone, but Marine's high-level officials and Gorosei, 5 elder stars, knew it clearly. Opening his mouth to refute Dustless, Fleet Admiral Sengoku suddenly found that he was speechless. To catch a thief, everything must be paid attention to the real evidence. Although he was convinced that Doflamingo was Dustless's dog, there was no substantial evidence to prove it. Moreover, falsely accusing a celestial dragon is not a small crime. Even if Dustless quibbles, Sengoku can't argue. He can only stare. Gorosei, 5 elder stars, will not be bored enough to testify for him. It's obviously nonsense, but it makes people speechless. This guy is shameless. Sengoku asked himself that he had never seen such a shameless person. Although Whitebeard was barbaric and unreasonable, at least everyone could retaliate. With Dustless, this rule that everyone abides by is invalid. Only he can play at will. The most terrible thing is that he can't fight back, he can only passively take the moves. I think, looking at Sengoku, Dustless said, everything has two sides. Although Doflamingo's strong invasion has brought great losses to Dressrosa, there is also a positive and optimistic side. Dressrosa is the second stop to enter the New World. After entering the New World, most pirates will come to this island to resupply equipment and provisions, as well as some necessities for sea navigation. Therefore, the public security is extremely chaotic. Pirates, big and small, are constantly coming in and out. The so-called Liku royal family is just a laughingstock. They are regarded as heir by those powerful pirates. After the pirates landed on the island, they naturally began to rob. The weak people can only be slaughtered. The so-called fairy tale world is just based on humiliation. Perhaps many flamingos sitting on the king of Dressrosa will do no good, but at least pirate robbery can be effectively eliminated. No one dares to ignore the existence of Shichibukai, a super fighting force. About half an hour later, Dustless took a sip of tea and slowly finished this long paragraph. This is also. Seeing that Dustless was going to talk nonsense again, Sengoku's mouth was twitching, and he was speechless by Dustless's rhetoric. In the end, he had to admit that this was an undeniable fact. Even if his heart was extremely uncomfortable, he had to admire Dustless's eloquence. It was obviously a reversal of facts, but Sengoku could not find a reason to refute Dustless's point of view. As Dustless said, it was because of the soft rule of the Liku royal family, which also led to the naivety of the local islanders. When facing pirates, they showed their weak side and were oppressed. In the face of the new King Doflamingo, of course, they dare not be presumptuous. Unlike the weak Liku royal family, Doflamingo, a bloody butcher, is the kind of person who advocates violence. He is not interested in soft prey. The more they resist, the more it arouses Doflamingo's interest. Unlike other pirates, as long as he can destroy the world, it doesn't matter what he does. Chapter 604. It's no wonder that Sengoku couldn't refute it. In this world there are only two kinds of people, either they are exploited or they exploit others. It's as simple as that. Seeing that Dustless didn't let go, Sengoku knew that the plan to prevent Doflamingo from becoming the king of Dressrosa had failed. The plan he had been brewing for several days went bankrupt because of Dustless's insistence. As one of the 7 warlords of the sea, he has to cooperate with Marine's combat staff. Just arrange Marine personnel near Dressrosa. Fleet Admiral Sengoku took a step back with hope on his face. But he was destined to be disappointed this time. Why is Dustless so troublesome to hide from Marine and the world government? He needs a quiet environment to create a peerless weapon like Pluton. Dustless can never agree with Sengoku. I'm a Marine, he's a pirate. If you think Doflamingo will agree, you can ask him. Sengoku, time flies, and in a blink of an eye, several days passed. Dustless's big ship sailed rapidly on the sea, setting off huge ripples that extended rapidly, and the water ripples swallowed the surrounding sea. On the deck, Dustless leisurely basked in the sun and enjoyed his afternoon tea. Sengoku, that old guy wants to keep me as a laborer, no way. Dustless proudly picked up the fruit in the delicate plate and stuffed it into his mouth. After hearing what Garp had done, Sengoku wanted to keep him in the Marine headquarters. In case Dustless came, this initiator would be an excellent fighting force. However, to his disappointment, the Whitebeard pirates not only did not move, but they also left and returned to the island where they were originally stationed in the New World, as if nothing had happened. Sengoku's view of Whitebeard has also changed. In his impression, the big thief who couldn't rub sand in his eyes and would seek revenge for the slightest flaw was temporarily as well behaved as a sheep. His sharp teeth and claws that could tear together were all restrained. Rumble. The den mushy on the table suddenly rang, and it was Hawkeye who called. Has the dark fruit been taken back? Before Hawkeye could speak, Dustless asked first. Hawkeye shook his head. I was a step too late. When I arrived at the scene, only the skin of the devil fruit was left. The fruit in his mouth was sprayed out. Wuxian was stunned for a while. When did Hawkeye become so humorous? After thinking of the person who ate the dark fruit, a chill flashed in his eyes. He asked calmly, Don't worry, we just have to kill that person. But then again, Bai Gu Mamu is willing to give the dark fruit to someone else. Who is it that she likes? The dark fruit was not something that could be found on the streets. In the past, even a flame fruit could cause countless pirates to fight over it. It went without saying that the dark fruit, which was dozens of times more precious than it, would cause a huge commotion. Therefore, the user must also be a confidant of Baigu's mother. A guy named Baron Eggy. His strength is quite good. He is slightly stronger than the average Marine Vice Admiral. He is also very young. The most important thing is that he is a loyal dog of Baigu Mamu. Hawkeye said bluntly. Baigu Mamu's men are different from others. Strength is secondary. The key is loyalty. The Baigu Mamu pirates have more than 5 people who are stronger than Baron Eggy, but they are all ambitious. Maybe the dark fruit will be given to them in the next moment. The next second, a cold light flashed and a big sword cut towards Baigu Mamu. This kind of thing can be found everywhere in the cruel sea of the second half of the Grand Line. Kill the guy named Baron Eggy so that even if he eats the dark fruit it won't help. In the end, the big Imam pirates are still drawing water with a bamboo basket. His eyes were cold. Dustless said coldly. What can be chosen by Baigu Mamu to welcome him is not heaven, but a cold and gloomy hell. It's just a small matter. Hearing this, Hawkeye confidently replied. This is extremely simple for him. He can easily kill Baron Eggy in just a few rounds. At that time, a new dark fruit will be born in some corner of the world. In the end, the final winner is Dustless. Whether it is Whitebeard or Baigu Mamu, they were all severely cheated once. Compared with the Whitebeard pirates, the Baigu Mamu pirates were much more miserable. More than 30% of the combatants were annihilated and Baigu Mamu herself was seriously injured. Although she also injured Whitebeard, she suffered more than Whitebeard in his prime. The title of the strongest man in the world, even Whitebeard will accompany him in the future, not to mention that he is still in the golden stage. When Whitebeard and Baigu Mamu fought, the Baigu Mamu pirates were doomed to be defeated. Due to Dustless's calculations, the New World's Yonko 4 emperors were hit hard. The Whitebeard pirates were the most intact. Although their combat power has declined, they still maintain their original state. The only thing that is worrying is that in the battle with Baigu Mamu, Whitebeard himself was inevitably injured. His body is not as good as before. The battle with Baigu Mamu was almost a battle of killing 1,000 enemies and losing 800 of his own men. As for the other 3 emperors, their fate was even more miserable. The Kaido pirates were hit by Dustless's Tensei Seismamai, and only a few elites in the entire fleet survived. Next is the Baigu Mamu pirates, who were lucky by the Whitebeard pirates and could only retreat in embarrassment. As for the Akagami red hair pirates, they received special treatment from Dustless and were the most miserable of the Yonko 4 emperors. Especially the Vice-Captain Beckman, who also carried the notoriety of killing each other, quietly withdrew from the New World and is currently active in East Blue. Anyone who wants to join a group of cannibalistic pirates has to think carefully. Although Beckman was framed by Dustless, the photos that cannot be quibbled have spread throughout the New World. Chapter 605. A few days later, under the connivance of Dustless and the indifference of the Marines, there was no doubt that Doflamingo easily seized the position of the king of Dressrosa and regained the throne that belonged to the Don Quixote family hundreds of years ago. The incident also came to an end. Caesar also secretly lurked in Dressrosa from the island of the New World. A large number of materials collected before to build Pluton were also transported to Dressrosa through various secret channels. After removing the bird cage, Dressrosa was already in ruins. Smoke and beacons were burning everywhere. The usually clean streets were covered with blood stains and corpses were piled up like a mountain. It was like purgatory on earth, disgusting and nauseating. In addition, Dressrosa also had countless toys for free. Although the scene was extremely bloody and depressing, the indigenous people living in Dressrosa all regarded Doflamingo as a god and their eyes were full of respect. Just as Dustless told him about the plan, Doflamingo used the ability of the string fruit to control King Riku and the Riku royal family's subordinates. They waved their blades and slaughtered the islanders. Doflamingo, who was used to being a villain, finally appeared in a righteous way to save the civilians who had sunk into the fire and water, gorgeously transformed into a savior. Red Hair Shanks's hatred for Dustless was deep in his bone marrow and penetrated his soul. How could he let go of the Black Hand who caused him to lose the New World and had to return to East Blue to recuperate? 4 Red Hair Shanks, who valued his companions, Dustless took away everything including his dignity. His friend Hawkeye Mihawk was instigated by Dustless. Beckman carried the notoriety of killing each other. The members of the former Akagami, Red Hair, pirates were all dead and they were forced to withdraw from the New World. Among the Yonko 4 emperors, he was undoubtedly the one who hated Dustless the most. He couldn't wait to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Shanks, don't worry about it. Fame and fortune are nothing to a pirate. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm infamous or famous. Somewhere in East Blue, the Akagami Red Hair pirates stopped here. Beckman stared at the unwilling Akagami Red Hair Shanks and comforted him with a calm tone. Even though he wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless to shreds in his heart, he still had to endure at this moment. Hearing this, the red-haired Shanks clenched his fists even tighter, his knuckles cracking. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. The more Beckman behaved like this, the more he felt helpless and guilty. If he had defeated Dustless, he would not have ended up like this. Speaking of which, I heard that the next town is called Windmill Village. It is related to the Navy's hero, Garp. I heard that his grandson was adopted by the people in that town. Seeing Red Hair Shanks so obsessed with Dustless, Beckman changed the topic, hoping to divert his attention. Otherwise, Dustless might become Red Hair Shanks' nightmare. He had lost his adventurous spirit and was like a walking corpse that only lived for revenge. Garp. Hearing this, Red Hair Shanks' empty eyes regained their luster. His face flashed with surprise. In the Marine, he and Garp barely had some friendship. Unfortunately, due to the different positions of the two sides, they abandoned their prejudices against each other and may become drinking buddies. You mean Garp's grandson was adopted? Red Hair Shanks' eyes flashed and his gloomy expression disappeared. Beckman nodded slightly and immediately his face was strange. Garp's grandson was called Monkey D. Luffy, but the kid didn't seem to know who his grandfather was and always mixed with bandits. He also has a brother called Portkas D. Ace and a kid named Sabo who grew up with him. Looking at the red-haired Shanks, Beckman truthfully reported that because he was afraid of the Marines' ambush, before he came to Windmill Village, he had already sent people to inquire about the situation of the village, and by chance he heard about the deeds of Monkey D. Luffy and his 2 companions. Suddenly realizing something, Beckman said, "Shanks, you don't want to. How can I have such a dirty idea? I don't care about the life of a kid." Waving his hand to interrupt Beckman, Shanks took off the straw hat on his head and looked at it deeply. The reluctance in his eyes disappeared and his hesitation turned into determination. Beckman's expression was stiff and he had already guessed the intention of Red Hair. He was about to persuade him to give up the absurd idea when Red Hair Shanks' voice sounded. "Captain Roger once said that D's will has a great relationship with that race. Tenryubito is called God, and D's will is the natural enemy of God. You might as well gamble, Beckman." For Dustless, Red Hair Shanks knew that he was not his opponent. Even if he fought for a lifetime, he may not be his opponent. He could only choose a powerful successor and gamble him in the next era. There is a D in the name and he is the grandson of Marine hero Vice Admiral Garp. This is the most suitable. If Garp knows that I trained his grandson to be a pirate, his expression will be wonderful. In the dark, Red Hair Shanks seemed to have seen Garp gnashing his teeth in the future. Red Hair Shanks laughed heartily and his previous depression was swept away and he was restored to his usual optimistic appearance. Seeing this scene, Beckman opened his mouth but didn't speak. He shook his head helplessly and a relieved smile appeared on his face. As a pirate, you have to be straightforward. Being fearless is the true nature of a pirate. Little did he know that this scene was seen by White Zetsu hidden in the dense jungle. "It's a good plan, but unfortunately it's just your wishful thinking, Red Hair Shanks." Glancing contemptuously at red-haired Shanks who was laughing boldly, White Zetsu's face was full of disdain. He snorted disdainfully at red-haired Shanks. The human heart was something difficult to control. Dustless may not be able to control it completely, let alone red-haired Shanks. Hard work and perseverance were praiseworthy, but there were some people that even Cheongchi would never be able to surpass in his entire life. This huge gap was not something that could be easily bridged, especially when he was counting on a little brat. Chapter 606. It was no wonder that White Zetsu was so disdainful of red hair. That straw hat had an extraordinary meaning. It had already become a spiritual symbol. Red Hair Shanks suddenly used it as a wager, hoping to defeat Dustless in the next era. It was simply a fantasy. It is undeniable that the will of the last D may really be able to defeat the celestial dragons, but Dustless belongs to this category alone. Red Hair Shanks' ridiculous bet is meaningless. But this guy is really shameless. He actually chose Garp's grandson. I'm afraid that the guy will be furious when he finds out that his most valued grandson went to become a pirate. White Jew frowned and had a deeper understanding of the shamelessness of the red-haired Shanks. This is deliberately provoking the relationship between them. White Zetsu couldn't help but look at Red Hair Shanks. This guy clearly knows that Luffy is Garp's grandson, but he deliberately does this. There are very few people with the will of D in their name, but they are not rare. In the New World, people with D in their name can occasionally be heard making waves. Whiz, whiz. While he was deep in thought, two black shadows whizzed over. White Zetsu was stunned. Seeing the shadows coming from afar, he hurriedly dove down, but it was too late. His arms were already clamped down by a powerful hand. You should be helping that guy collect information. No wonder he can predict the future every time. A guy like you is really a master of collecting information. A dull whisper sounded in White Zetsu's ears. Looking up, it was Red Hair Shanks and his deputy captain Ben Beckman. Both of their hands grabbed White Zetsu's arms at the same time and subdued him. Damn, I was careless. His eyes stayed on the two and White Zetsu scolded. Thanks to Dustless, Red Hair Shanks is now in a very awkward situation, but he is also one of the Yonko 4 emperors. The three colors of Haki, Armament Haki, Haoshiku, Kenbenshoku, have reached the peak and his strength should not be underestimated. Spit out the information you have inquired in the past and I will let you live. Looking down at White Zetsu without emotion, Beckman said coldly. Hearing this, White Zetsu sneered again and his eyes were replaced by sarcasm. Spit out information? Wishful thinking. He was created by Dustless. How could he betray him? In addition, according to the hatred of the Akagami, red hair, pirates for Dustless, even if they reveal information they will be killed. You two are just dabblers, yet you want to defeat Master Dustless. You're Red Hair Shanks, one of the 4 emperors. I think you're more like a child who hasn't woken up yet. White Zu, who was determined not to speak, mocked them. Since they were going to die anyway, he might as well take the opportunity to mock them and collect some interest. Red-haired Shanks's eyebrows immediately turned gloomy. In the past, when he was ridiculed like this, or if it was someone else who ridiculed him, he would just laugh it off. But this time the target was Dustless. He couldn't let go of the grudge with a smile. It was impossible for him to treat the death of his beloved crew member as air. That is to say, you heard what we just talked about? Beckman asked coldly with his eyes narrowed. At the same time, he had already sentenced White Zu to death in his heart. He also hated Dustless very much, but as a vice captain, everything must be solved rationally. If he relied on emotion alone, it was not impossible for red-haired Shanks to disappear long ago. Yes. Looking at Beckman's eyes, White Zu admitted frankly. These two people both hated Dustless to the bone. Most likely, even in their dreams, they wished that they could dismember him into 10,000 pieces to vent their anger. When they were captured, White Jew was already prepared to be killed. The will of D is the natural enemy of God? Maybe, people with D in their names may be able to overthrow the world in the future. This is not denied by White Zu. There are countless idiots in the celestial dragons. On the other hand, the people with D in their names are almost all dragons and phoenixes among men. I'm sorry, but my master is not in this category. You want to defeat him with D's nonsense fairy tale. It's just wishful thinking. It's ridiculous to use this to cover up your inner helplessness. White Zu loudly ridiculed, and the end result is just death. It's not a big deal. What evidence do you have to say that guy is special? Boom. His eyes flashed with anger. Red-haired Shanks grabbed White Zu and threw him on the tree, making a dull impact. Just a spy, a mouse that can't see the light, has such a good eloquence. That guy is surrounded by monsters. His eyes locked on White Zu. Red-haired Shanks' face was indifferent, and the sword in his hand was unsheathed. The sword was covered with a cold light and pointed at White Zu's head. He didn't expect that one day in the face of an insignificant pawn he would feel speechless. Dustless Master is also a celestial dragon, but he is different from that group of garbage. I advise you to wash your neck and obediently stretch out your neck for punishment. With a strange smile on his mouth, White Zhou sneered. Dustless is an outsider. He does not belong to the world in front of him. In the eyes of Dustless, these people are just a group of ignorant indigenous people. It's that simple. Dee's will is the natural enemy of God. As a visitor from another world, Dustless is naturally not in this category. The ridiculous idea of relying on Dee's will to defeat the celestial dragon is just a strange strategy produced by red-haired Shanks out of powerlessness. Poochie. The cold light passed through White Zhu's body and easily divided him into two. The unknown sword in his hand was skillful and cut iron like mud. At first glance it was not an ordinary thing. Do you need to change to an island? Looking at White Zhu who was killed, Beckman suggested. Dustless's subordinates were all strange and unpredictable people. Whether it was their ability or strength, it was beyond imagination. Just like White Zetsu who was spying for information, no one would have thought that there was such a strange existence in the world. No need, he has been killed and the information can't be passed out. Looking at White Zhu's body, red-haired Shanks turned and left indifferently. He had made up his mind to lead Luffy to the path of pirates, and it was impossible for him to leave Windmill Town in a short time. Hey, seems that I am too proud. About half an hour later, White Zhu emerged from the ground. The reason why he was locked by red-haired Shanks and Beckman was that he deliberately exposed his breath. Chapter 607. Mariehua. Compared to the red-haired Shanks, Dustless in the spacious luxury villa was like a god. Hancock rubbed her legs and from time to time, she passed 2 sparkling grapes to Dustless's mouth. The days were extremely comfortable. After a while, Dustless seemed to be aware of something special. His lazy eyes opened and his dazed eyes became clear. He still had to distinguish between business and private matters. Young master, you... Hancock saw this scene and was slightly stunned. When she was about to withdraw, Dustless's lazy whisper sounded in her ears. Zoe, continue. Hancock nodded gently and then obediently rubbed Dustless's legs. About a few minutes later, White Zetsu emerged from the ground. Hancock was already used to this scene. White Zetsu always appeared in such a mysterious way. He was used to it. Dustless's people were so mysterious. About the time it took to burn a stick of incense, White Zetsu told Dustless all the moves of the red-haired Shanks. That brat's way of doing things is really vicious. Only he could think of such a vicious strategy of killing his grandson. Has he been forced to such a state? It's really hard on him, but this is not enough. Wuxia said expressionlessly. His tone was calm. He had already expected this. A pirate is a pirate and ruthless is their portrayal. Red-Hair Shanks is actually a butcher whose hands are stained with blood. In his career as a pirate he has defeated many pirate groups. It is because of those pirate groups that he has today's sky-high bounty and the status of a hero. Don't think that a pirate is so kind. When they are forced into a desperate situation, they will often show the darkest and coldest side of their heart. Monchi D. Luffy, the grandson of Hero, Garp. Picking up the red liquid on the table, Dustless's face swept with a playful smile and then he drank it. There was still some red blood stains on the corner of his mouth. Do you want to kill him now? White Zetsu said coldly. The so-called him is naturally Garp's grandson Monchi D. Luffy. Hearing this, Wuxia just glanced at Bai Zhu faintly and then shook his head resolutely. He was just a little kid. The effect he could play was negligible. There was no need to worry about him. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Let red-haired Shanks be defeated by the cruel reality. As for the so-called Dee's will, the legend of God's natural enemy. Although he wanted to suppress the ridicule in his heart, he couldn't control it. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up as he sneered. There were countless legends in the world, but the probability of them turning into reality was 0. But that kid thinks he can be safe if he escapes to East Blue. Dustless's face was cold and the goblet in his hand instantly shattered. A flawless vicious plan suddenly formed. Even if red-haired Shanks escapes to East Blue, Dustless will tear off his arm. Waving his hand, White Zetsu came over and listened carefully to Dustless's plan. After a moment of silence, White Zetsu's face was strange, and he looked at Dustless with suspicion. Unlike before, instead of saying that it was a detailed plan, it was better to say that he took advantage of the opportunity. What made White Zetsu speechless and unacceptable was that this time, the object of the use was a group of bandits. The dike of 1,000 miles collapses because of an ant's nest. The more unexpected the small character, the more likely it is to play a huge destructive role. Even if the enemy is a passerby, sometimes you need to be 120% alert. Seeing White Zetsu's suspicious eyes, Dustless explained. There were so many examples like this that they could be counted as the grains of sand in the Ganges. In the future, Whitebeard and red-haired Shanks fell because of this. At the beginning, Z was the same. Because he thought that Dustless was a celestial dragon, which was synonymous with idiot, he saved Fisher Tiger from the fishman race. As a result, he was beaten by Dustless. Seeing Dustless's insistence, White Zetsu didn't dare to say more. After all, it was Dustless who created him. He gently nodded and chose to obey Dustless's order. Then he sank into the depths of the ground and his aura disappeared. Just like what Dustless said, the more easily overlooked a minor character would be, the more unparalleled and unimaginable the destructive force they would display. Master, why don't you just kill red-haired Shanks? Blinking her watery eyes, Hancock asked puzzledly. Her enchanting little face was filled with curiosity. Her clean and delicate facial features revealed her dimples that caused people to daydream. Combined with her fresh and refined temperament, it made people unable to extricate themselves from her. She was more dangerous than a deadly poison. If the toy is dead, what fun is there in life? No matter what, he won't be able to escape the curse of fate. Since he's so fond of playing the savior game, I'll play with him to my heart's content. Dustless glanced at Hancock, his eyes clear, and said, "People like me hate people who think too highly of themselves. They can't face their own status. They always think that they are special and can do anything. I really don't know where he got this confidence from. Funny." At the beginning, Dustless didn't mean to fight against red-haired Shanks, but this kid repeatedly jumped out to destroy his plan. Especially the red-haired guy, Dustless was extremely tired of him. He always thought that God had arranged for him to be the savior of the world. He was omnipotent and could do everything easily. However, Wuxian had changed his fate and changed his identity as the savior of the world. He had changed his identity as the savior of the world into the role of a clown. Master is also bad enough. Hancock sighed. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was the consequence of offending Dustless. He thought that death was the end of it, but in reality he was gravely mistaken. He could neither live nor die. Only when the other party's spirit had collapsed would Dustless send him to heaven and throw himself into the embrace of God. Chapter 608. For Hancock's dumbfounded expression, Dustless just ignored it. Perhaps for Hancock, Dustless's ideas are too extreme and impersonal. Dustless never cares about what others think. Counting the world in front of him, Dustless, who has lived 3 lives, understands the truth of human nature better than Hancock. If you don't bully others, it doesn't mean that others won't bully you. Although Dustless is only 17 or 18 years old on the surface, Dustless, who has lived 3 lives, understands this truth better than anyone. The so-called dignity in the final analysis is fought with fists. Seeing Hancock's puzzled face, Dustless was too lazy to explain. After all, she has too little experience and doesn't understand the real indifference of human nature. Without his complicated life experience, it is difficult for Hancock to understand Dustless's pain. There are almost no people who can empathize with him. Master is right, but we can't be soft-hearted to the enemy. After a while, Hancock's face was firm and determined. In an instant, Hancock suddenly understood the meaning of Dustless. "It's good that you can understand." Dustless chuckled. She closed her eyes comfortably and hummed happily. Over time, Hancock's massage skills improved by leaps and bounds, and she grasped it just right. The whole person was like floating in the clouds, and the nerves that were usually tense were relaxed and extraordinarily comfortable. Hancock's next sentence made Dustless helpless. "If I had strong strength at the beginning, I wouldn't have been humiliated and captured by Mariehua." Hancock clenched her teeth and said indignantly. Dustless rolled his eyes when he heard the words, and these words were directed at him. He shook his head and didn't care about it. He also knew that Hancock's mistake was unintentional. It was true that if Hancock had strong strength at the beginning, she wouldn't have been kidnapped to marry Hua and become Dustless's slave. After following Dustless for a while, Hancock gradually realized the cruelty of reality. In this world, being weak is a sin, and the sky in the future is left to those who are prepared. Time passed quickly and a few hours slipped away quietly between the fingers. It was almost evening, and the sunset on the horizon covered the entire Mariehua, and the earth was covered with a layer of golden and fiery red morning glow, which was beautiful. Of course, ignoring the miserable screams, Mariehua's golden color is even more beautiful. Following Dustless, Hancock's pretty face was pale, and her beautiful eyes looked at the villas behind her with fear, and then looked at Dustless who was walking leisurely in front of her. She took a deep breath and patted her chest. If she hadn't met Dustless, Hancock might have been the same as those slaves now. She would have been bullied and oppressed by the celestial dragons every day and night, suffering all kinds of inhumane treatment until she was tortured to death. Thinking about it made her feel scared. Her eyes couldn't help but look at the other side of Mariehua, where the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and the office of the world government are sacred and inviolable. People who pass by from time to time will show indescribable decency. Do you think it's very contradictory? Wu Chen's deep eyes fell on Hancock's face as he asked calmly. Hancock nodded in fear and then fell silent. Mariehua is indeed so contradictory. On one side is the office of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and many departments of the world government, sacred and righteous, while on the other side is the residence of the celestial dragons. They live in the old era and are extremely evil. Torturing slaves and other shameful things are as simple as eating and drinking here. In fact, Mariehua is the epitome of the world, and it is also deformed. Dustless whispered softly, and in fact the whole world works like this, not only Mariehua. No one can change everything. Let's go. Looking at Hancock's pale face, Dustless turned and left, and an unexpected figure suddenly entered his eyes. That guy. Isn't that Borsellino, Kizaru? On the dock, Borsellino in a yellow-striped suit came into sight, and Dustless said unexpectedly. Hesitating, Dustless walked over and Hancock followed. Kizaru, who is nearly 3 meters tall, has a bitter face, and his expression is sluggish as if he is seriously ill. His eyes are dark and from time to time he flashes a rare light. Obviously he is very upset. This is strange. Dustless's mouth raised a playful arc and his pace was faster, and Hancock behind him also opened a distance. It is worth investigating what happened behind him that can make Kizaru show such an ugly expression. Kizaru's wretched old face drooped, and it was full of gloom as if someone robbed his money, and not only did he not return it, but also beat him up. Borsellino. The light voice entered his eyes and Kizaru, who had his head down, looked up and Dustless's figure came into view. Voice South, Saint. Kizaru's gloomy expression was swept away, and Kizaru's smooth tone was respectful. The identity of Tenryubito and Marine Admiral were enough for him to look up to. I heard that Kuzan and Sakazuki and you will be promoted to Admiral soon. Why did you suddenly come to Mariehua? Staring at Borsellino's battleship, Dustless frowned slightly. This battleship is obviously different from Marine's battleship. It belongs to the world government or simply belongs to Vegapunk's scientific force. Vegapunk, that old guy, actually asked me to be his test specimen, and Fleet Admiral Sengoku has agreed. Kizaru's old face twitched fiercely, and his expression became more gloomy, and his eyes were gloomy enough to drip water. Dustless is one of his own people and he did not hide it. Despite Vegapunk's repeated assurances, the scruples in Kizaru's heart were still difficult to dispel. It was like a white mouse being experimented on by Vegapunk and no one could be relieved. Believe in Vegapunk's technology. Even if you really die, he can bring you back to life. Dustless smiled. He knew that Vegapunk was interested in the ability of Kizaru's glinting fruit. At the same time, he suddenly realized that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. Chapter 609. The world is very big and more than 95% of the area is the sea. Even if Dustless reaches out and sings again, it is impossible to cover the whole world with one hand. Therefore, if he wants to dominate the world, he must have a very large number of troops. Dustless didn't think of this before, but now after hearing what Borsellino said, Dustless also had an idea. Vegapunk, that old guy. I can talk to him about a business deal that old guy shouldn't refuse. With a gloomy smile on his face, Dustless's eyes lit up. Dustless can order Vegapunk to hand over ordinary things, but confidential research documents are as difficult as ascending to the sky, and it may not be able to scare him. What's more, Dustless needs something that can't be seen on the street. According to Dustless's guess, the Gorosei will definitely stop him. What he wants is the essence of Vegapunk's lifelong research, the bloodline factor, which is the foundation used by the later generations of Doflamingo to create human-made devil fruit. Caesar once said that what Doflamingo stole was an incomplete part. It's impossible to get the complete information of Vegapunk's bloodline factor. Even if he wants to call it out, the 5 Elder Stars won't just watch the information fall into my hands. Dustless frowned as he remembered the conversation with Caesar in the Den Den Mushi a few days ago. According to Dustless's understanding of the Gorosei, they will definitely not be willing to give such an important thing to him, and they will definitely refuse it with various excuses. Since they can't do it on the surface, they can only obtain it secretly. Obtaining the bloodline factor can also indirectly create an army of devil fruits. In the future, Kaido will buy a large number of artificial devil fruits from Doflamingo and create the world's first artificial devil fruit army. Dustless can follow this method. His current subordinates are only Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Wanting to control the world with these people is tantamount to a fool's dream. The government's humanoid weapon project has been failing a lot recently. There is no suitable body to carry Vegapunk's experiments, so this hard job fell on me. Borsellino sighed and said dejectedly, the undead army that attacked Mariehua last time made Vegapunk see the feasibility of the humanoid weapon plan. He wants to put my glint fruit on it. As a reward, the highest commander of the scientific force will be me. It sounded tempting, but the premise was that it was a success. Dustless can understand Borsellino's pain. He is a dignified vice admiral, and he will be promoted to admiral at the same time as Kuzan and Sakazuki. But now that Vegapunk had taken a fancy to him, it was self-evident how tangled he was. Borsellino couldn't help but envy Dustless. Dustless's ability was very similar to his, but Vegapunk only took a fancy to him. As for Dustless, Vegapunk probably didn't have the courage to ask. Vegapunk's experiments often fail? Focusing on the keywords, Dustless asked blithely. In his impression, Vegapunk is the world's #1 scientist with countless geniuses. Although Caesar was the first to stand up and express his dissatisfaction, the fact is that he is not as good as Vegapunk. That's for sure. He is not a god, failure is natural, a strong mind of 500 years is nothing. Borsellino said with disgust. A vice admiral of the marine is about to be pushed to the operating table by Vegapunk. It would be strange if he was happy, and Vegapunk's failed works are also countless. Maybe Borsellino will also be labeled as a failure. There is no suitable human body to carry my glint fruit. Normal human beings are too far behind. At the very least, their physical strength must reach the level of a vice admiral. Kazar's lazy tone was full of pride. Dustless heard this and nodded. He has used glint fruit for decades and he knows the power of glint fruit better than Borsellino. If he wants to install some of the glint fruit's abilities on the humanoid weapon, he does need a suitable and strong body. In fact, there is someone who meets your requirements. Dustless's seductive voice sounded in Borsellino's ears, and the latter's eyes became cold, but soon dimmed and his lazy tone was puzzled. I know 2 people can definitely. Mr. Z and Mr. Garp's body both meet that level, but they will certainly not agree. Borsellino's tone was unprecedentedly gloomy and he said helplessly. You dare to think about it, Vegapunk doesn't have the courage to do it. Dustless said with unusual certainty. Vegapunk didn't dare to think about using the Marines' hero, Garp and the former Admiral Z as an experiment. Even though his status is high, he didn't dare to open his mouth. Not to mention Z for the time being, the hero Garp has become a symbol of the Marine. In fact, I can recommend a candidate. With his body's hardness, there is no problem for him to withstand Vegapunk's destruction, but I'm afraid there will be conditions. Dustless's words were like a life-saving straw, attracting Kazari's attention. It's normal to have conditions. When I became a lab rat, I also made conditions. Otherwise, who would agree to this kind of experiment? Borsellino thought deeply. Become Vegapunk's test subject for free, what a joke. He wasn't that magnanimous yet. Borsellino also made conditions, that is, to become the highest officer of this force in the future, without any promise of reward, who would agree to be Vegapunk's test subject. The current meatball fruit ability user, the man who once had the title of Tyrant, the bounty of 296 million berries, is also one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma. Dustless said bluntly, his tone was decisive. In fact, Dustless had secretly controlled Tyrant Kuma last time, and now he is his loyal dog. Thinking of the importance of the bloodline factor, which is more important, this Shichibukai is as light as a feather. If he loses a bear, he will get a group of artificial devil fruit troops in the future. After some calculation, Dustless did not hesitate to sell the bear. Chapter 610. The reason why Bartholomew Kumagotsi controlled him was entirely because this kid was looking for trouble. Now that he replaced Kumagotsi with the results of the bloodline factor, Dustless felt that it was quite cost-effective. Anyway, this Kumagotsi can't play any role, so it's better to use the waste. Make the best use of people, make the best use of things, and squeeze out your last value. This is also the necessary price to pay for attacking me. Dustless's face was as usual, and he didn't feel guilty. Being able to let Kumagotsi live until now is already a virtue of God. Bartholomew Kumagotsi? He can indeed take on this task. Borsellino's eyes were shining, and he sighed that this person was feasible. Before he joined the 7 warlords of the sea, Marine had a headache with Bartholomew Kumagotsi. Unlike other pirates, Kumagotsi has the name Tyrant, and is extremely hostile to Marine. His nickname is from slaughtering Marines. Kumagotzi's abnormal physical defense is vivid in Borsellino's mind. His strange ability can bounce off all physical damage, and even human fatigue can be easily bounced off. He is definitely the most suitable experimental body to carry some of the abilities of the glinting fruit. As for his conditions, Borsellino whispered, and his wretched old face became normal. If Kumagotsi really chooses to be the experimental body of the world government's human weapon, then the conditions can be described as a lion's mouth beyond imagination. The reason why you became an admiral should be inextricably linked to this experiment, Borsellino. While pondering, Dustless's wise whisper sounded in his ears. Borsellino was stunned, looked at his eyes, and then slowly nodded. It's a recognition of Dustless's words. The reason why he can reach the sky in one step is indeed related to this experiment. What is an admiral? It means that in the entire Marine from now on, only under the fleet admiral above tens of thousands of people, not only needs the strength of an admiral but also merits. The criteria for becoming an admiral can be roughly divided into 3. The most important is strength, followed by seniority, and in addition there are personal merits. The 3 are indispensable. To put it simply, to become a great general, one still needs to have battle achievements. To become a great general, one must have achievements that can block the mouths of the people in the world. Only by becoming Vegapunk's test subject can Borsellino have a meteoric rise. This guy is very cunning. Even if Vegapunk's transformation fails, the tyrant bear will be the one to suffer, and he can stay out of it. Rubbing his head awkwardly, Borsellino said helplessly, Louis South is really wise and frightening. He guessed my thoughts. As Dustless said he did have such an idea. Even if it failed, it would only be Xiong who was going to undergo the physical transformation. If it failed, Borsellino would not be implicated. If Xiong did not join in, he might be the one who was going to undergo the physical transformation. No wonder he would make so many excuses. Maybe in the future there will for Borsellino number 1. Borsellino number 2. He shuddered uncontrollably when he thought about it. Even if Vegapunk fails in the end, the Marine or the world government will not blame Vegapunk. Now Borsellino is just an insignificant vice admiral. Although he is dozens of times stronger than the average vice admiral, he is still far worse than Vegapunk. The world government and the Marine will still operate without Borsellino, and without Vegapunk and his inventions, they will fall into an unprecedented disadvantage. Now if Tyrant Kumagotsi joins, it will naturally be the best of both worlds. But will that guy really join the humanoid weapon experiment? It doesn't look like it. Thinking of Kumagotzi's hatred towards the Marine, Borsellino asked suspiciously. He is the one who hates the marine the most among the Shichibukai. Dustless glanced at Borsellino and replied, "You have to understand that Kumagatsi is now one of the Shichibukai. In a way he has already compromised. If he hates the marine he will not join the Shichibukai, and he will not shamelessly serve the marine. You can ask him yourself." Leaving a light sentence, Dustless disappeared into the sky, and his breath disappeared without a trace. Hancock, who followed, saw Dustless leave and also left. "This guy. I used to hear that his fruit ability is similar to mine, but I thought it was just a rumor. Now it seems that some of his abilities are very similar to the glint glint fruit, and his ability to use it is much stronger than mine." Borsellino looked serious and exclaimed in his heart. There are legends about Dustless's fruit ability among the Marines' higher-ups. Most of the statements are consistent with Borsellino's glint glint fruit ability. He thought it was fabricated, but today not only is it true, Dustless's control of the glint glint fruit is completely beyond his understanding. Do I need to ask him to teach me 2 moves? Forget it, he is not free and I am not free. With a sigh, Borsellino didn't think much about it and quickly turned back to contact Kumagatsi of the Shichibukai. After all, it is a good thing to have a scapegoat. The night sky was particularly quiet and peaceful. Borsellino quickly contacted Kumagatsi, thinking that he would refuse his conditions on the spot. He didn't expect him to agree to participate in the experiment. And the condition is Vegapunk's secret research data. The bloodline factor. The bloodline factor is beyond the limits of Borsellino's rights. After some contemplation, for the sake of his life he can only go to Vegapunk, the mad scientist. Hearing that Bartholomew Kumagatsi of the Shichibukai, Vegapunk agreed even more strangely and didn't even mention the word no. Not only was Borsellino not happy, but he also had an ugly expression on his face. He secretly scolded Vegapunk for being shameless. He felt abandoned. When there was no suitable experimental subject he flattered him every day, but when there was Kumagatsi he immediately put him aside. Chapter 6:11. At night, Mariehua was not as peaceful as it used to be. Many ports did not stop opening. Suddenly, many kings from all over the world came to visit Mariehua. Every 5 years the world government will hold a meeting with members of the joining countries. The content of the discussion is naturally meaningless topics such as world peace and the Revolutionary Army. The quiet Mariehua was also lively at this time, and the celestial dragons were also strangely quiet, no longer torturing slaves, and the depressing screams no longer came out. Dustless had to sigh. When did the arrogant celestial dragons pay so much attention to their image and influence? Get out of the way, don't follow. Seeing Dustless coming, the faces of the kings on the roadside changed greatly and they took the initiative to give way. Although they didn't know what Dustless's surname was, they knew the uniform that the celestial dragons dared to wear. Some of the people who came with their families grabbed the soil in the flowers and smeared it on the faces of the women. Sometimes being born beautiful was also a sin. Looking at this scene, Wu Chen's expression was normal. He was like a sculpture without any emotion. His face was cold and detached from the world. He walked through the crowd magnanimously. La la la. The cheerful voice of a child was filled with innocence, like the laughter of a butterfly strolling among the flowers. His watery eyes shone like pearls, and his wave-like blue hair gave people a refreshing feeling. Behind him, there was a slightly impatient voice with a hint of helplessness. Don't wander around, this is not Alabaston, Vivi. The young girl turned her head and made a face and then continued to run forward. Perhaps because she was too excited to play, she didn't realize that there was a celestial dragons coming toward her. Bang, ouch, it hurts. Vivi covered her head and there were some tears deep in the corners of her eyes. Looking up, she saw the ugly celestial dragons with bubbles. The tears in the corners of her eyes immediately came back, and her little face was as pale as paper. Sorry, she is still young, she didn't mean it. Kobula, who was Vivian's father, hurriedly came over and took him into his arms. His eyes were full of despair, and he looked at the disgusting celestial dragon in front of him with a nervous breakdown. He resisted the fear in his heart and looked at him. How dare you bump into me? You're courting death. The ugly Tenryubito glared at the father and daughter and pointed the delicate pistol in his hand at Kobula. This sudden turn of events attracted everyone's attention. No one extended a helping hand to Kobula and his daughter. There were even some who acted as if this had nothing to do with them, with a mocking expression on their faces. Kobula's heart and soul were torn apart. Unknowingly, he was already kneeling on the ground. Just as he was about to open his mouth to beg for mercy again, a light shout stopped Kobula. "You are the king of Alabasta. It doesn't matter if you kneel, but your people won't trust you anymore." Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw Dustless and Hancock walking leisurely. "So it's you, you clown." Staring at the ugly Tenryubito, Dustless suddenly found that he had an impression of it. It was the Tenryubito who was tortured by Luffy in the Sabaody archipelago. His name was Charles Ross and he had a sister named Shalulia. "You freak, you want to intervene when I'm dealing with a lowly person? Where is your dignity as a Tenryubito Roy South?" Seeing Dustless coming, Charles Ross roared. The gun in his hand was put down. He knew what would happen if he offended Dustless, because he was thrown into the garbage dump by Dustless's men like many Tenryubito a while ago. "You can shoot and kill them." Glancing at Charles Ross, Dustless's mouth then curled into a playful smile, touched his chin, and made a thoughtful and incomprehensible expression. "However, I really want to know what kind of unprecedented scene it is for a Tenryubito to be chased by a shark in the sea. Maybe you will be famous for this. Why don't you let us try, Charles Ross?" The ugly Tenryubito was disgusted and looked at Dustless as if he was looking at a devil. Immediately, he slipped away without hesitation. His crooked steps were like a roly-poly, extremely funny, and he fled in a hurry. He who had been beaten by Dustless knew that this was not a joke. "Do you regret it now?" Staring at the disappearing back of Charles Ross, Dustless turned his head and asked. His eyes fell on Corbula's frightened face and he sighed. "About 800 years ago, 20 kings established the world government. The royal family of Alabastan, which is today's Corbula, and his daughter Weiwei, were actually Tenryubito like Dustless and Doflamingo. But the Nefertari family refused to move into the holy land of Mariehua, and they lost their identity as Tenryubito. The ancestors made the decision, but the younger generation can't make the judgment." Corbula, who was still in shock, trembled and was full of fear. When Dustless heard it, he could hear the regret. If he and his daughter Weiwei were Tenryubito, there would not be such a frightening scene today. Tenryubito can look down on anyone as if they were insects. Even their so-called powerful kings are just the lowest existence in front of Tenryubito. To put it bluntly, they are pariahs. The Tenryubito society belongs to the old slave social system. They have a strong concept of bloodline, a strong sense of racial superiority, and a serious attitude of discrimination against anyone except Tenryubito. In short, they don't treat anyone as a human being. Well, Dustless, who was about to speak, suddenly noticed a pair of cold eyes, secretly peeping at him. He did not dare to approach deliberately but looked at him obscurely. "This is interesting." His sight suddenly became as sharp as a knife, sweeping through the sea of people, and a figure suddenly came into view. It seemed that he was aware of Dustless's gaze, and the spying figure quickly flashed away and went into the vast sea of people, and the breath disappeared as if it had never appeared. "I forgot about this guy. But your courage has not shrunk. As always, you are bold and reckless. You actually think that's it, stupid." Chapter 6:12. A burly body suddenly came into Dustless's pupils, wearing a heavy black coat, with a golden hook in his left hand, a tall figure of nearly 2 meters and a horizontal scar on his face. "It is Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, today. This old boy's strength is improving rapidly." The dark pupils turned around Crocodile, and the heart of the ancient well rippled. Although Dustless was a little surprised, he nodded silently. The humiliation given to Crocodile last time has taken root and sprouted in his heart, planting the seeds of hatred, so he can do his best to become stronger. Only in this way can the distance between each other be narrowed, and the figure of Dustless of the other side will be getting closer and closer. In fact, Shichibukai often participate in this kind of meeting. As one of the 3 major forces of the Grand Line Shichibukai, which country is too unbalanced and needs their approval? It sounds powerful, but in fact only small people like Crocodile are tempted. It's like Hawkeye doesn't care about this kind of meeting at all. "But you dare to take the initiative to test me?" As the saying goes, Courtesy demands reciprocity. As the master of Mariehua, I will also give you some gifts. The indifferent expression was replaced by a smirk without a trace, and his eyes were slightly scattered. After seeing that no one was around, Dustless's gaze was as sharp as a knife, and the direction locked was Crocodile's body. In the dark, Crocodile, with a cigar in his mouth, seemed to sense the existence of Dustless, and his footsteps suddenly stopped, and he turned around suspiciously. The first thing that came into his eyes was Dustless. This guy, he did it on purpose, deliberately letting me find him? Crocodile, who was aware of the existence of Dustless, was frozen, and he couldn't help but think of the scene when he came to Mariehua for the first time as Shichibukai. The scene of being crushed by Dustless was vivid in his mind. Almost instinctively he felt something was wrong and a calm heart became irritable, but he couldn't tell the specifics, so he could only secretly put up 120% of his heart on guard. This is Mariehua in the tiger's den and wolf's den. It is not a kind place. Even if he is killed there will be no one to bury him. You be ****. You peeked at my wife bathing and stole her underwear. At this moment, a red-faced and stout king ran over angrily. He pointed at Crocodile's nose and scolded him. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked so angry that he wanted to tear Crocodile into pieces. What nonsense are you talking about? If you don't want to die then get out of my way. The unexpected change stunned Crocodile, and he immediately scolded with a murderous aura. He didn't put the king in his eyes at all and was full of contempt. It was not because this was Mariehua. He could deal with the minions in front of him with a hook. This was the territory of the world government, so he had to give some face. In a world where the strong were respected, the one with the biggest fist had the final say. You peeked at my wife bathing and stole her underwear. How dare you talk to me like this? The king's eyes widened and he couldn't believe it. He didn't expect there to be such a rampant flower thief in the world. Crocodile's face became more and more gloomy when he heard this, and the hook in his left hand was raised. When he was about to end the king's life, another change occurred. The surrounding void was slightly distorted. Although the amplitude was not large, it could be seen with the naked eye. In particular, the space around Crocodile was the most serious. It was filled with some kind of mysterious force like a whirlpool in the deep sea, and something seemed to break out of its shell. This is fire? Seeing such a strange scene, Crocodile was stunned, and he immediately tensed his spirit and became alert. He noticed a throbbing flame from this unsightly whirlpool. It was not very lethal, but it had a different kind of strangeness. For a while, even the king who provoked him looked away. That's not right, this is... Looking closely, Crocodile, who suddenly realized that something was wrong, twitched his old face and had already guessed what kind of powerful thing it was. Ka ka ka. The distorted void suddenly expanded and burst open like a mirror. Countless women's underwear fell out of it and fell in front of Crocodile like fine snow. This sudden scene made everyone stunned, and they stared blankly at the women's underwear all over the ground. You shameless bastard. You look like a fiend. That black one is my wife's. The previous king said bitterly with tears streaming down his face. Old man, are you a ***king idiot? This is obviously a frame-up. How did you become a king when you look like a stupid pig? Crocodile, who was angry out of humiliation, grabbed his neck and roared furiously. With scarlet fire in his eyes, Crocodile vomited blood in his heart. This unexpected disaster really came at the wrong time. He was beaten up when he just came to Mariehua. It was extremely unlucky. Let go of me, don't forget where you are. The powerful low voice sounded through his ears and Crocodile's expression was stiff. Although he was unwilling, he still let go of his hand and threw the king in front of him out like garbage. The person who spoke was the former Marine Fleet Admiral, and now the Commander-in-Chief of the entire army, Sky. This is a blatant conspiracy. What is your government doing? With his mouth twitching, Crocodile roared to defend himself, and his face was extremely gloomy. Fleet Admiral Kong's old eyes looked at the women's underwear all over the ground. Of course he knew that this was a conspiracy, but it had been confirmed and there were even witnesses. Crocodile jumped into the sea and couldn't wash it away. In the future he would have a funny name, Underwear Thief. Staring at Crocodile's old face, Fleet Admiral Kong was happy. He used to be a marine and hated the deformed organization, 7 Warlords of the Sea, very much. What's more, this is Mariehua. How can he tolerate crocodile's trouble? Chapter 6:13. Crocodile's old face dripped blood and turned into a strange purple color. An unprecedented grievance spread from the bottom of his heart. He was 100% sure that the person behind the scenes was Dustless, who was smiling at him. Crocodile couldn't fight back. He was teased like a clown without any dignity. He had no evidence. As the saying goes, catch a thief with the stolen goods. This is the truth that has not changed since ancient times. Framing a celestial dragon, this unique big hat will be buckled on his head. Every dog has its day, let's wait and see. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, Crocodile walked away with a black face. Before leaving, he did not forget to glare fiercely at the complacent Dustless. Then he turned around and left indignantly. He could only suffer in silence. If he stayed here, he would only be humiliating himself. Their obscure eyes locked onto Cobra at the same time, glancing at him faintly before fleeing in a panic like a mouse. Being stared at by a group of ants and yet unable to do anything, Crocodile felt his stomach ache just thinking about it. His hatred for Dustless reached an all-time high. Looking at Crocodile's disappearing back, Commander Kong shook his head incomprehensibly. He also knew that Crocodile's black hand was Dustless. You don't see the big picture. Going against the current will only bring about your own destruction. That laughable fantasy in your heart is just a lie to yourself and others. With an imposing wave of his hand, Chief Kong and the group of guards left one after another. Only then did this farce come to an end. In the eyes of Commander Kong, Crocodile was just an idiot filled with hatred. So, this kind of person can be 7 warlords of the sea. He couldn't agree. No matter how hard Crocodile tried to change fate in the end, the result was in vain. Some people are not qualified to choose to dominate fate at all. Like Crocodile, who doesn't know life and death and tries to challenge the wheel of fate, there is only one end. He will be ruthlessly crushed and turned into a pile of flesh and blood. That kid seems to be planning to do it. Frowning slightly, Dustless naturally saw Crocodile's malicious eyes. At the same time, he couldn't help but admire Crocodile's methods. If he didn't know the development of this world in advance and had the ability to predict the future, he might not have known about the existence of a sophisticated weapon like Pluto. Thank you for saving me, Kobula thanked him gratefully and sincerely. If Dustless hadn't helped them out in time, they might have been shot to death by the celestial dragon named Chalos. Judging from the violent and bloodthirsty mood of the celestial dragon, they might have been brutally dismembered after death. This kind of appalling thing, the celestial dragons here are rare and common and everywhere. May I ask my benefactor? The corner of Kobula's mouth stopped moving. Realizing the difference between their identities, Kobula swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. There was a world of difference between the identity of a king and a celestial dragon. Rashly asking for the other party's name was also a kind of silent blasphemy. Big brother, what's your name? Seemingly seeing her father's confusion, Vivian took a step forward and blinked innocently. Looking at the young and innocent girl with cold eyes, the indifference in Dustless's eyes slowly converged, and a rare gentleness swept across. His indifferent voice was also magnetic. Thinking of his complicated life experience, he frowned and said, "Now my name is Lois South." "No. Do you still have your previous name?" Vivian blinked innocently as she asked. Dustless was obviously not interested in the child's question. Like a ghost, he disappeared into the void and answered her question on a whim, leaving only a faint voice that lingered in the void. Maybe, but who knows? The moonlight was like a plate, and the night sky was as quiet as stagnant water. Late at night, the lively Mariehua also quieted down. Under the hazy moonlight, a black shadow could be vaguely seen sneaking in the dark. Its steps were light like a dragonfly skimming the water. Its movements and jumps were natural, elegant, and vigorous. From this exquisite skill, it can be seen that it has reached the realm of perfection at first glance. Under the faint moonlight, one could vaguely see the silhouette of a person. She was tall and had long black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall. Her facial features were regular and beautiful. Her sparkling eyes were unusually calm and filled with wisdom. The direction of the girl is heading is Dustless's villa. Is she here? Hancock, who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly opened her eyes and saw the figure rushing towards her, showing a soft smile, like an old friend meeting with a little excitement. "Long time no see, Robin," Hancock said gently with a smile. Apparently she was very familiar with the figure in front of her. Looking at Hancock's figure, you will be surprised to find that this person is the wanted criminal with the name, Devil Child. Nico Robin. A few years ago the Marines that surrounded Nico Robin were destroyed by Dustless. She was rescued by Dustless. By chance she also became Dustless's subordinate. She was sneaking outside like a hidden chess piece. Now she is secretly a subordinate of Crocodile. This time she came to Mariehua with Crocodile. She was able to sneak into Mariehua safely. Naturally she made a simple disguise to not be recognized. "Long time no see, Hancock." Nicole Robin also greeted him warmly. Obviously the relationship between the two of them was unexpectedly close. She asked, "Master, why did you suddenly call me over?" Crocodile is suspicious by nature. He has already executed many of his subordinates who were suspicious. Crocodile is cunning, despicable and shameless, but it is undeniable that he does have some cleverness. Every time he can lead the situation to his own side, he can be regarded as a hero of a generation. Hancock shook her head when she heard this, indicating that she didn't understand. Dustless's thoughts of preparing for a rainy day could not be seen through, let alone understood. Chapter 6:14. As for why Nicole Robin agreed to be Dustless's subordinate, the reason was very simple. First, she was desperate and she had to find a spacious and safe shoulder to lean on. Second, Dustless promised that after her mission was completed in the future, he would use Rinnegan's power to resurrect her mother with the technique of Rinnegan. Although there was suspicion of taking advantage of people, Dustless never valued the process. No matter how perfect the plan is, there will be countless loopholes. In contrast, he pays more attention to the final result. Hancock and Robin walked together, laughing and chatting happily towards Wu Chen's bedroom. From time to time, there was a crisp and pleasant laughter showing their harmonious relationship. "These two little girls. Forget it, it's not bad." Dustless looked down at the figures walking side by side, standing with his hands behind his back, nodded and chuckled, then shook his head and couldn't help but sigh. Dustless still clearly remembered that because of a certain protagonist, the relationship between Robin and Hancock was not harmonious and even a little bit hostile. It was completely new to him. When dealing with the enemy, the muzzle was united and the internal relationship was harmonious. This was the situation Dustless wanted to see. Although he scoffed at the so-called fetters, he still hoped that they could be restrained by each other's sincerity. As for an anomaly like Doflamingo, Dustless didn't hold any hope. Sitting on the sofa in silence, Wu Chen tasted the steaming tea carefully. Sometimes he would pick up one or two pieces of carefully made pastries and put them into his mouth. In this world he had developed the habit of eating snacks unconsciously, which could be regarded as killing the boring leisure time. About a few minutes later Robin and Hancock came to Dustless's bedroom. "Master." The smile on their faces disappeared and the two respectfully said. Dustless nodded. "You don't need to be so serious, sit down." Robin and Hancock looked at each other and sat down quietly. Compared with the slightly cautious Robin, Hancock, who usually gets along with Dustless every day, was more relaxed and natural. "Is Crocodile going to attack Alabaston?" As soon as Robin sat down, Dustless asked. "I don't know the specific situation, but it's true that he often pays attention to the situation of Alabaston, especially the royal family of Alabaston." Dustless frowned and his face was full of doubts. It stands to reason that a small character like Crocodile knows the information of Pluton. After thinking about it, Dustless filtered the people he contacted in the past few months. He only thought of one person who may know the source of information of Pluton. Embryo Ivankov, a senior cadre of the Revolutionary Army and a paramecia hormone fruit user. Although the times are few, Dustless learned from White Zetsu that the two had contacted each other. As for the content of the conversation, only God knows. Maybe Crocodile got the information of Pluton from him, so he recruited Nico Robin, the Devil Child, opened an umbrella for her as a shichibukai, and took the opportunity to sneak into Mariehua. "Master, why do you want to interpret the poneglyphs? These unmentionable pasts should be the pasts that the world government has always wanted to erase. Exposing them will do you no good as a celestial dragon." Staring at Dustless's face, Robin asked doubtfully. The general content of the so-called poneglyphs, according to her guess, is to record how the 20 kings destroyed an ancient kingdom 800 years ago. Of course, there are also records of the whereabouts of ancient weapons. If you have to find a reason. Looking at Robin's eyes and sorting out his thoughts, Dustless said, I'm not interested in who is right or wrong in history, and ancient weapons are actually dispensable to me. Dustless said frankly and seriously, showing sincere feelings in his words. Even though his expression was still frozen and cold, it was a lot gentler, and the cold villa gradually warmed up. To put it simply, I'm just curious. Curious. Hearing this, Robin couldn't help but be startled, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. The answer she had been looking forward to for a long time should be refreshing, not so simple and casual. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Robin's sight no longer changed. People say that the eyes are the windows of the soul. As long as there is any lie, the eyes will dodge and shrink and even blink unnaturally. Could it be true? After a while, Robin said in astonishment. Her black eyes were as calm as autumn water, but her own eyes were constantly changing and jumping irregularly. She had never thought that Dustless's reason for looking for the poneglyphs would be so frivolous and careless. Don't be so surprised, there are very few things in this world that can satisfy me. Dustless's words were full of helplessness, and he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. From Robin's stunned and doubtful look, she seemed to think that it was a lie. I'm not interested in the poneglyphs. If you insist on looking for a far-fetched purpose, it's nothing more than searching for the truth. Don't you think it's ridiculous to be fooled by the past 800 years like a clown? Dustless stared at the doubtful Robin and asked. I think I have some understanding. Robin nodded, and her clear eyes were still a little confused. She vaguely understood Dustless's meaning. Dustless wasn't interested in the truth of history. Who was right and who was wrong had nothing to do with him. It was 800 years later, and everything in the past had changed. It had turned into a pile of yellow soil, and everything had lost its meaning. The only thing that annoyed him was that if you died, you died. Why did you have to leave behind a bunch of deceptive mysteries that harmed the future generations? You played the whole world like a chess piece in the palm of your hand. This was also the reason why Dustless couldn't accept it. No one wanted to be deceived by a corpse that had decayed hundreds of years ago. Others might not care, but Dustless had a bone-deep hatred for it. Chapter 6:15. His tone was resolute and decisive, and it was obvious that he was not joking. Nico Robin's eyes widened as she looked at Dustless incredulously. She didn't expect such a ridiculous reason. She could only smile bitterly. Perhaps this is the mind of the Tenryuzu people. They eat, drink, play, and do things for no purpose. They just want to have fun. Will the Straw Hat really invite me to join their pirate group in the future? Although Dustless has confirmed it again and again, Nico Robin's heart was still full of doubts. Dustless has now clearly explained what will happen in the next 10 years. How can she not be surprised? It seems that everything will play out according to the script set by Dustless. Maybe there will be accidents, but it's just a trivial matter. Don't worry about it. People who don't have the power and try to change the development of history will only be crushed to pieces. Dustless vowed that Robin joining the Straw Hat Pirates is a sure thing, and he can use the Straw Hat Pirates to decipher the poneglyph. Staying with him will attract unnecessary trouble. Tenryuzu and the only remaining scholars of Ohara are mixed together. It's very attractive to think about this topic. After the collection of the poneglyph, what should we do with the pirates? Robin asked curiously. After that? That's unnecessary. After they have no value, we will kill them all. Dustless murderously said. Even though he has a good relationship with Dustless, he won't change his position because of this. Unless Monkey D. Luffy is sensible, Dustless doesn't mind letting him live. If he doesn't, he will end up like Uzumaki Naruto. You have grown up so much. I have to take back the power of the Sharingan that I lent you. Dustless whispered. When he secretly brought the young Nico Robin to Mariehua, Dustless was afraid that she would be in danger, so he lent her his dojutsu. Now Robin has the power to protect herself, and there is the protection of Crocodile. The power of Sharingan continues to stay in her body is just a burden. Time flew by quickly. After instructing Nico and Robin on many important matters, it was almost dawn. The three of them were not ordinary humans. Even if they stayed up for an entire night, their expressions would not change. Robin then used his agile movements to leave without anyone noticing. It was as if nothing had happened. At the same time, Dustless also brought the bloodline factor information he obtained to Dressrosa through a secret channel, and successfully fell into the hands of Caesar. Caesar immediately carried out various experiments and accelerated the production of the artificial devil fruit. Because Fengche village was too remote, no one cared about it. Bandits would often visit this place. On the mountain road, a group of bandits was about to go to the town to rob, but a strange figure suddenly flashed. He had a handsome face and fair skin. At first glance, he was the son of a wealthy family. "Pretty boy, hand over all your valuables and I'll leave your corpse intact." The ferocious bandit stood out. Seeing that Wu Chen was dressed like a young master from a wealthy family, he immediately warned. At the same time, he shook the machete in his hand, full of threat. "Sig Mountain bandits, it should be you. The king of your group of rats is called Sig and he has a bounty of 8 million berries." Ignoring the threat of the bandits, Dustless said to himself, and at the same time his eyes began to twist sharply, turning into dark red magatama, staring at the group of people with no expression. "You called me the Rat King?" As the leader, Sig's old face twitched fiercely. He stepped forward and his old face turned green. He waved his hand and said with hatred, "It's not too late to cut him up and search him so that he doesn't have to struggle." Since the boss gave the order, the group of bandits naturally did not dare to disobey, and they rushed toward Dustless. "You group of bandits can fight with Akagami of Yonko 4 emperors, and indirectly take one of his arms. It can be regarded as a blessing from the ancestral grave." A faint ripple appeared in his scarlet eyes, and the aggressive group of bandits instantly fell to the ground like dead dogs. Guru. At this moment the Den Mushi in his arms suddenly rang. It was used by Dustless and Hawkeye. "Did you kill the guy called Baron Eggy?" Before Hawkeye spoke, Dustless asked in advance. "Eating the dark fruit has to pay a price, and this unbearable price is life. Do you think you can be safe after eating the dark fruit with the blessing of Bigumamu? What a fool. Although it is a little more troublesome, it has been done." Hawkeye was a little tired, but he was full of energy. It is very difficult to quietly kill the people protected by Bigumamu. He must find a chance to kill them. Otherwise, once he is discovered, he will be besieged. Therefore, Hawkeye wasted a lot of time looking for the right opportunity. But there is one thing: Kaido and Bigumamu seem to have colluded. I don't know what they are planning. On the other side of the Den Mushi, Hawkeye's cautious voice sounded. "The destructive power of the 2 Yonko 4 emperors is beyond imagination, and their power can even defeat the Whitebeard pirates. Kaido and Big's mom could easily restrain Whitebeard, and even severely injure Whitebeard, and their fleets could crush Whitebeard's fleet with overwhelming power. Don't worry, I have already predicted the collusion of the Yonko 4 emperors. A pirate is a pirate. There is nothing they can't do under absolute interests." Dustless was calm. He had already predicted that this day would come. Not colluding means that it is likely to be destroyed. Even if there is a grudge, it must be cut off and forgotten. Otherwise, it will be a dead end, so even if there is a grudge in the past, it must be eliminated. Compared with life, nothing is more important. You are very indifferent. Hawkeye's tone was speechless. When 2 Yonko 4 emperors join forces, there is absolutely no force in the world that can easily crush Universal. Chapter 616. The strength of a Yonko 4 emperors almost dominates all the seas and can be called an invincible existence, like an emperor, the strongest existence above all creatures. The strength of 2 Yonko 4 emperors is self-evident, and the strong vibration emitted by them is enough to affect the whole world. This guy doesn't know how to be anxious at all. Hawkeye can't help admiring Dustless's calm mentality. The Yonko 4 emperors teaming up is not a joke. If you are not careful, you will be suppressed by the absolute power that can burn the world. You will never be able to raise your head. So what, are we going to beg for mercy in front of those 2 guys, Hawkeye? Dustless on the other side of the Den Mushi asked. His frivolous tone was extremely indifferent. The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is anxious. Hawkeye suddenly realized that he was thinking too much. Dustless is not worried and there is no need to worry. Even if the sky falls, Dustless will be the first to take the hit. Only when Dustless collapsed would it be their group of underlings' turn. Then again, both the Bigamam pirates and the Kaido pirates have been hit hard. Even if they join forces with each other, they won't be able to take any practical action in a short time. After lurking around Bigamam for a while, Hawkeye knew the current situation of the Bigamam pirates. The entire fleet was beaten by Whitebeard. Even Biga's mother was wounded, so it was easy to imagine the miserable fate of the crew and sailors of the fleet. Kaido is not that strong, he is not as good as Bigumam. Dustless said on the other side of the Den Mushi. Not to mention that the two of them were working together now. Even if they were working in collusion with each other at their peak, Wuxian was not afraid at all. Even if the number of people is not as good as Bigumam and Kaido pirates, the absolute strength is enough to crush everything, and the role of the human wave tactic is minimal. Absolute strength is Dustless's confidence, so he is not afraid of Kaido and Bigumam. After a casual chat, Dustless closed the Den Mushi and turned to look at the bandits on the ground with a cruel smile on his face. For the sake of world peace, it was better to eliminate the Yonko as soon as possible. The first to raise the butcher's knife was the Akagami, red hair, pirates who hated Dustless the most. The enmity between the two sides had accumulated for a long time, and it had already reached the point of being incompatible like fire and water. Dustless naturally wouldn't let go of this extremely rare opportunity. "I'm sorry, Garp. I might have to make use of your grandson this time," Dustless said coldly with a cold glint in his eyes. An unprecedentedly vicious plan quietly formed in his heart. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame Red Hair Shanks for asking for it. There was no one else to blame. He was completely caught in his own trap. Red Hair Shanks could make use of D, and Dustless was no exception. He could also make use of D, and give him a taste of his own medicine. No matter how optimistic Red Hair's temperament was, he would still feel despair if he was hurt by someone he trusted and bet on in the next era. Dustless is going to attack him step by step until his spirit collapses. Wonky. D. Luffy. If you want to complain, you should hate the word D in your name, so you were valued by Red Hair Shanks, so you were calculated by me. Scarlet eyes widened again and ripples visible to the naked eye appeared. The bandits on the ground stood up again. Their eyes were blank and their eyes were empty and lifeless. It was as if their inner souls had been taken away and they had become walking corpses. Obviously, they had been controlled by Dustless's Sharingan and had lost their ability to think. Dustless is now the one who dominates their consciousness. Red-haired Shanks had absolute trust in Luffy, but Dustless didn't go against that kid's wishes. He had to borrow Luffy's hands to once again inflict heavy damage on his unbearable heart, until red-haired Shanks' spirit collapsed. He planned to use the same method as Beckman to trample on Red Hair Shanks. No, this time he wanted to be even crueler than the last time. In the past he was able to escape from death. This time, even if he could not kill him directly, he wanted to leave an indelible mark on Red Hair's body. "Look at my eyes, you waste." With a loud shout, Dustless shouted at the bandits. "They are the most important actors in the play and they can't be missing. Now go and catch that kid Monchidi. Luffy for me. Remember the Akagami red hair. Pirates must see that it was you who did it." With a cold light in his eyes, Dustless ordered. The bandits nodded blankly and immediately rushed toward the windmill town, in the direction of the bandit house where Luffy usually goes. Although the plan is a bit rough, Dustless is sure that it will succeed. Sometimes the simpler the strategy, the more unexpected the effect. This group of hired actors is rough, but their opponents are the same pirates, so it shouldn't be a problem to grab Luffy. Sure enough, after about an hour, this group of bandits did indeed come back with a fainted little ghost. The only thing that was not complimentary was the fact that there were pursuers behind them. Kid. As far as the eye could see, a golden-haired child with a face full of freckles and a hat was immediately reflected in Wu Chen's eyes. These two guys. One of them is the kid named Sabo, and the other seems to be the son of One Piece, Roger Porcas D. Wu Chen couldn't help but be speechless. He knew that these two brats were ferocious, but it was inexcusable for a group of bandits to be chased by two brats. Wansho Tensei. After looking at the child in the hands of one of the bandits, Dustless's right hand exuded a strong gravitational force and easily sucked Luffy over. Then he looked at the approaching bandits and with a calm and powerful light shout, suddenly the dust splashed and the ground was full of smoke. The tyrannical repulsion swept out, and the ground where Dustless was standing also had a deep pit. Kinra Tensei. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.